Welcome to the Adapting to Change, Leveraging Partners, and Having an Impact concurrent session. I'm Darlene Lynch, the Community Health Transformation Director at the South Carolina Office of Rural Health. At the South Carolina Office of Rural Health, we guide local communities in developing leaders and implementing strategies to address the root causes of health. Capacity building, it's an area that many coalitions struggle with, but with the right partners at the table and a strong vision and drive to make healthy change, sustaining and growing your coalition is possible. After major funding ending in 2015, Eat Smart Move More, York County, adjusted to sustain their healthy eating and active living efforts. During this session, you will learn how they maintain their relevance and position with partners and the community. Today's speaker played a major role in funding transition. She is former chair of Eat Smart Move More, York County, Liz Duda. I hope you enjoy learning more about the coalition's capacity building and sustainability strategies.
Thank you for that introduction. I will just go ahead. So my name is Liz Duda, and can you see my screen okay? Are you seeing the slide? Lauren, are you seeing my screen okay? So, okay, assuming that you can see my screen okay, so you should be able to see the title page right now. Again, I'm glad to be here today. Thank you very much to Eat Smart Move More South Carolina for hosting this tremendous conference, from which I've learned so much and met amazing people over the years. My history with Eat Smart Move More York County is that I was past chair, and then I joined the Advocacy Committee originally in 2014. I began to attend general membership meetings and learn more about Eat Smart Move More York County. I realized all of its efforts aligned with my values. It had a solid core membership base and a great backbone through Eat Smart Move More South Carolina. So I stepped up to chair in 2018 when the Let's Go major grant funding was ending. Having been in the chair role for 3 years, this year I transitioned to working on Eat Smart Move More York County advocacy and communications efforts. In today's presentation, I'll talk about how our chapter adjusted to remain relevant and engaging even after the Let's Go grant ended, since the grant had largely defined our direction. This presentation will address changes that our chapter made, how we engaged our partners, how we responded to societal developments, and how we continue to have an impact in York County. Topics are going to include our strategy, the leadership team, partnership development, community outreach, work streams, advocacy, and challenges, and how we address them. And you can see on this slide what I hope you get from today's meeting. And I'll also look forward to taking to going into Q&A. On to the presentation. So we're the York County chapter of Eat Smart Move More South Carolina. Early in 2019, after the Let's Go funding ended and I had a year under my belt as chair, we went through a strategic planning process. In that process, we confirmed our mission and vision, and we newly defined our core values, using the Eat Smart Move More South Carolina values as reference. As you can see from this slide, the first one was leadership. And as I said, our core membership was solid and dedicated. Eat Smart Move More York County had led many important efforts throughout York County, such as walkability studies and support for farmers market that were impactful for those communities. The Eat Smart Move More name was highly recognized and valued by many. And our coalition wanted to leverage our leadership role to continue to promote health where we felt we could have the most impact, and that was related to obesity and chronic disease. Our second core value was collaboration and partnership. So we wanted to extend our reach and impact and be able to do more good. So we chose to focus on that area. We realized we could help our partners in these efforts, and working together, we could more effectively serve our communities. Our third value that we identified was sustainability. And I've learned through Eat Smart Move More the importance of affecting change that will last and how that is done, which is through policy, system, and environmental changes. Our fourth value we identified was health equity. We wanted to be sure that our reach was extending throughout York County to all members of the community. Our efforts and those of our partners often target communities of folks with poorer health. but we all began to be more deliberate in asking who was missing from our table. This past year, Eat Smart Move More South Carolina sponsored peace training, which had an emphasis on racial equity. And we're now trying to be more intentional in our decision making, more open with our conversations, and we speak up if we recognize a potential inequity. The fifth value that we identified was adaptability, acknowledging that we in York County have both rural and more urban areas which have different needs. But this past year has also shown that we can be flexible in our efforts to respond to what is going on in the community. Recognizing that people need physical activity when many parks and playgrounds were shut down due to COVID, for example, we compiled and shared information about what was open, where people could go, and what they could be doing to stay active. Recognizing that people lost jobs, on top of people already experiencing food insecurity, we focused on food insecurity efforts and communications. People could and did turn to Eat Smart Move More York County as a source of information and help, and that was thanks to our adaptability in these uncertain times. So I believe that Eat Smart Move More York County ongoing efforts align with our mission, vision, and values, as does our stellar leadership team, which I'll talk about in the next slide. So as I said, I joined Eat Smart Move More York County with an already strong leadership team in place. Fortunately, we've been able to retain virtually all of them by creating the new technical advisor role, which you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of that screen. We've grown the leadership team in the last couple of years with the goal of extending our reach in York County geographically and by sector, with representatives from towns and cities, from school districts and Winthrop University, from food service and summer feeding programs, from health partners, organizations that target the youth and elderly, and state level DHEC. So that's the good side. On the other hand, a larger leadership team is harder to manage. And so I have various tricks for trying to remember everybody on the leadership team, but that is a challenge. And I also did hope that with this many people, someone would step up to chair our chapter when I step down, but presently we are rotating the role amongst the leadership team members monthly, which is not ideal. But in these challenging times, I remain grateful for everyone being engaged to the extent that they can. And as an all volunteer coalition like we have now, different folks can be engaged at different times and for different tasks. With all of these folks committed to our mission, having this reach across our county has been invaluable. In the next slide, I'll talk about the partnerships that we've been able to develop largely through our leadership team reach. So as I said, we wanted to make sure that we had the right people at our table. We found that we could be more effective by having our reach extended to these various groups that you see on the slide. We defined partners as entities or people working with or contributing resources to our chapter to achieve a common goal. The resources didn't have to be financial. It could be people on the leadership team or a committee in a consultative capacity, sharing their expertise or providing guest speakers. With COVID, we focused on food insecurity efforts, and we had conversations with many of these groups listed here on the slide to understand what we were doing, see how we could support them, and figure out how we could fill in the gaps. Our summer feeding work drew in the jurisdictions, educational coalitions and community groups, farms and farm coalitions, and medical groups. We did some work in the physical and mental health space too. We had a session for the community in which we drew in a local business to talk about mindfulness. That owner, so that's from the local businesses line, that owner is regularly giving back to the community, and she was glad to be able to communicate to our audience and our connections. Similarly, we hosted a panel of Parks and Rec directors from 4 of our 5 local municipalities who talked about what was going on recreational-wise in their municipalities. So we still recognize gaps in our partner list. For example, our local county is missing here, but coalition building is a process that we are committed to. In the next slide, I'll share more about how we leverage our partners or build new partnerships. Feedback that I received when I took over the chair role was that we were hosting too many meetings. So we scaled back to host general membership meetings every other month and invite compelling guest speakers. We've seen so many benefits from these events that you see listed here on this slide. For one, we're bringing awareness to the important work that these groups are doing. We also are creating new partnership opportunities as we often collaborate on efforts that align with Eat Smart Move More York County values. Also, this is another way that we're leveraging our Eat Smart Move More York County leadership team as they come up with ideas about whom to invite to be speakers, recognizing they recognize what's important to our community at this time, and they make the contacts and invite the speakers. And hosting these guest speakers is also benefiting our chapter as we're promoting them, we're also generating awareness of Eat Smart Move More York County. So I'll speak about some of the good that has come from our hosting of these guest speakers on the next slide. Two groups that we invited to speak at an Eat Smart Move More York County general meeting in 2020 were the Historic Paradise Foundation, which is a new nonprofit working to revitalize a local community in Fort Mill. And it's largely comprised of elderly African-American homeowners and younger kids. It once was a thriving community, but over time it suffered hardship. We had learned about the Historic Paradise Foundation through the grapevine, but we didn't have a direct connection and we were interested in learning more. The second example that I'll talk about is Impact York County. That's a coalition that formed out of the 2016 South Carolina Population Health Summit that maybe some of you have attended. Eat Smart Move More York County was one of the original members of Impact York County, and many leadership team members are heavily involved in this group. So going back to the Historic Paradise Foundation, which we hosted in August 2020. After learning about their work, which they spoke about at our meeting, we wrote an article for our website where we discussed what they shared with us at the meeting. And then we publicized that on social media, and we often refer back to that for people who want to learn more. These articles and the publicizing of the work can be critical for new organizations without a documented track record, as this helps generate awareness and credibility for their work, awareness of and credibility for their work. Another benefit of having them at the meeting, the robust discussion led to much idea generation and introductions to people who could provide support to their efforts. For example, as part of their online educational series, in one session that they hosted, there were two groups that they made contact with through our meeting. There was the South Carolina DHEC SNAP Ed coordinator who shared tips for shopping and cooking on a budget. Also, my employer was there, the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, which shared financial literacy lessons. And that speaker tied it into the SNAP Ed lesson that had been given earlier in that educational session. Also resulting from that meeting, our Eat Smart Move More York County chapter wrote a letter of support for a Historic Paradise Foundation grant application. So much good comes out of these meetings. There were similar goods coming from the Impact York County meeting. And one additional one that I will talk about is that Eat Smart Move More York County ultimately helped stand up the Healthy Food Access Committee of Impact York County. To do that, we leveraged our deep connections and experience, given that access to healthy foods had been a key component of the Let's Go grant. So we helped make introductions and we helped set the agenda and the initial priorities as Impact York County's committee originally formed. So the main takeaway that I would like to highlight from this slide is that Eat Smart Move More York County has had an important impact on our communities, leveraging our partnerships and through collaboration, even without funding. In the next slide, you can see how we've used our collective voice to benefit our communities. Just as it has been across the world and the United States, these are trying times in our communities. Our local coalition has found a way to leverage our leadership team, partners, depth, and experience in ways that are consistent with our vision, mission, and values to do good in our communities. This slide lists ways we have used our voice to bring awareness and information and resources in two areas that we've recognized as critical to building healthy communities in York County. So in this slide, we talk about how we've supported our communities through COVID information sharing, as well as how we've been working to support racial equity. Regarding the COVID information sharing, I'll say that from a personal level, I found that this work often kept me sane as I was stuck at home with my family. And my family was even able to join me as we took advantage of some of the volunteer opportunities related to food insecurity that our coalition was highlighting. Similarly, I was able to engage my family in discussions about racial equity as I tried to work through how I personally and the organizations at which I volunteer could make an impact. As I mentioned earlier, I'm grateful to Eat Smart, Move More South Carolina for providing the backbone to support local coalitions, which are so important to our local communities. And we can reference, let's see, the remaining slides, if any. I can talk, let's see, I'll go through the remaining slides too. And let me see, was there anything specific that I would highlight? So the COVID information sharing, we had, what the work that we did was we wrote articles, we had interviews on the media, some videos posted to YouTube, interviews. We had virtual interviews where we shared information. This slide references helping stand up that Impact York County Access to Healthy Food Committee, participating in Eat Smart, Move More South Carolina work. So taking advantage of their offerings and their leadership, learning from them and trying to help support them. And then there are so many groups out there putting out good information. So we compiled information and we shared it out with our membership. And we also contributed to an interactive map that had food resources on. So it was an online map, and we provided information for the map, and then we directed people to it. Regarding racial equity, we discussed it. We tried to learn more about it. I did a personal introspection that I shared with my group and have shared publicly. And then Eat Smart, Move More South Carolina hosted a training that the coalitions were able to attend, which was promoting equity among communities effectively, which was the peace training that I've mentioned. Okay, so now moving on to the next slide. There's a note for you in the door. I can now talk about the committees. So we have multiple committees at Eat Smart, Move More York County. The first one is the Access to Healthy Foods Committee, which has been around for a long time. This is currently led by Lynn Caldwell. And Lynn Caldwell is also, she works for the Farmers Market Management Services. She's director there. And the focus at this Eat Smart, Move More York County committee is on advocacy, collaboration, and education. And I want to point out, so we have our committee here. This is different from the Impact York County Healthy Food Access Committee, which is more action oriented. So we've been careful about, we attend each other's meetings, we understand what the other is doing, and we try to support each other so we are not duplicative. So since Lynn reinvigorated this committee, we've launched a mission and vision statement and a public Facebook group, and she's worked on advocacy and trying to educate groups also. So you can learn more about that on our website. Then as I said, I stepped down from the chair role and I'm currently overseeing the advocacy committee. So what we are trying to do as part of the advocacy committee is use the Eat Smart, Move More York County voice to influence people who are in positions of making decisions for our communities. So this is part of ensuring sustainable change. So the advocacy committee supports, coordinates, collaborates with our Access to Healthy Food group. So we try to understand what they're doing, we try to understand what our partners doing, and we try to lend our voice to support those efforts. So we have written up pieces, we've submitted letters to the editor, we've written and spoken at community meetings. So we've had some good success, for example, in partnership with the Bike Ped Coalition of York County. We have attended meetings, public meetings, and been able to speak up in support of safe pedestrian and cycling access in various communities throughout York County. And then sometimes following that, after we speak, we will write up what we've written, what we have talked about, and post that to our websites. We have spoken to the local municipal planning organization, both in person as well, or virtual, as well as writing up letters of support for projects that we think are worthy. We've also spoken up to the Department of Transportation. We've also spoken to local school districts in the county and municipalities in support of safe routes to schools, recognizing that the South Carolina Safe Route to School program no longer exists. So that's the Advocacy Committee. In the next slide, I'll mention the 5210 committee. So Dr. Dave Keeley oversees Healthy Together 5210, which is, we've partnered with Atrium Health to roll out 5210 into Rock Hill and Fort Mill school districts. 5210 covers healthy eating and active living. So it's 5 hours. So it's 5 servings or more of fruits and vegetables, fewer than 2 hours of recreational screen time, 1 or more hour of physical activity or play, and 0 sugary drinks or more water. So we have that in the school district, and we are also, Dr. Keeley's group also received the Let's Go 3.0 grant in 2019, and we'll be launching it in the early childhood settings in collaboration with York County First Steps. We're also waiting for a video to be shown about that will be shared with the schools about the 5210 and the program. And we're excited to introduce a new action figure who will be replacing Cam Newton. The next committee is the Communications Committee. So here we are, we highly leverage our social media as well as including the website. So check out our different channels if you're interested in any of those. So Instagram, website, Facebook, Twitter, and then personally on LinkedIn pages. Eat Smart Move More South Carolina has a LinkedIn group, but we use our personal LinkedIn to reference that. Then the programming committee is led by Dan Fesperman, who is with Atrium Health, and he is ensuring that we now at this point can get the guest speakers to our meetings. As I've already said, that's a critical part of our outreach. So they meet periodically to talk about who might be, what's going on in the community and who we might like to invite to our meetings. And we think about, as we're extending the invitations, we think about who, if they align with our mission, vision, core values. And what we're trying to do is to learn more about the partners, get awareness of their efforts, and identify collaboration activities, as I spoke about earlier. So, and they meet, I think, every other month. And then the last slide is back when we were forming our strategy, we looked at what we could be doing in order to be most effective. So these are various strategies that we have employed over the years or considered. And this originally came from Eat Smart Move More South Carolina, and we have added some to it. So we have, our various committees have worked using these different strategies, or we have leveraged them, many of them in some way. So we considered this, we talked about it during the strategy sessions and figured out what we wanted to focus on. So I would say, Lauren, is it a time, can we go to Q&A at this point?
We have a few questions. We have about 20 minutes left in this session. So, hello everyone, I'm Lauren Everett. I'm a community coordinator for Eat Smart Move More. My pronouns are she, her. So you can submit questions now through the Q&A tab on the right side of your screen. The first question we have is, how do you measure the engagement and effectiveness of your collaborative efforts to ensure that you're working towards impact?
How do you measure, and can you repeat that?
How do you measure the engagement and effectiveness of your collaborative efforts to ensure that you are working towards impact?
So measurement is of course valid. The data that I personally can see from my communication standpoint is how much engagement we are getting on social media. So that's how I'm seeing the eyeballs that we're getting. But I know that it depends on the effort. So that's the awareness component of it. There's also areas like how we're supporting Impact York County and in establishing the food share program right now, for example, and during the time of over the past year, they've also been delivering free food boxes to the community. So there we've got tangible numbers so we know how many boxes of food have gone out, how many people have been served. So there we've got data. So when you're those are two measurement areas that where I can actually see data and refer to it. But I would say largely it is how much feedback we're getting, conversations that we're having, how many people are engaged with us. So people that are coming to our meetings and saying the impact that we've had on them. So oftentimes it's more anecdotal than data driven. Is there any other information that I could give to fill out that answer better?
Thank you so much for that answer. Our next question is, do you have suggestions on how state agencies and state organizations can funnel resources and tools on evidence-based best practices to the local level to support PSE efforts?
So I'd say at a state level, so just repeating the question, how at a state level funds can be funneled into local communities.
Yes.
So I know it is effective. I would say the model that Eat Smart Move More South Carolina is using to have local chapters and to as I said, to provide the backbone to local chapters. So at a state level, I do think it would be a good idea to communicate with such groups as Eat Smart Move More South Carolina, which has fingers in many of the local communities, if not all of the counties. And one way that Eat Smart Move More South Carolina has been doing that with the limited funding that it currently has been doing micro grants in the communities, and the applications have been relatively simple. So people have given grants to Eat Smart Move More South Carolina. They have had smaller micro grants for the communities, and people have applied to those. So partnerships with organizations like that can be useful. And then just partnerships and outreach efforts. Is that effectively answering the question?
I think that's effectively answering the question. I have another question. How do you recruit volunteers? Like, how do you recruit people to get involved in the coalition and keep those people engaged, especially during off months?
Yes, so volunteers, we have specific events that we host or support, and those are largely, so it depends on what the event is. It might be a sign up genius. So for example, there's a group called the Community Cafe, which has a food truck that goes out into the community 3 or 4 days a week. There are opportunities to prepare food for the truck 3 or 4 days a week and serve the food, and they've got various time slots. So it's an established daily, weekly program, and so that is put out on Facebook, and we promote that. They'll let us know if they don't have enough volunteers, and we will try to bring eyeballs to it. And so Sign Up Genius is one way, and word of mouth. And we also have something in York County called the York County Interagency Coalition that we are members of. And that is, they have a monthly meeting where all the local agencies and coalitions get together and share what they're working on. And I found that it is a great way to communicate what's going on and share information, and including getting volunteers that way. They will also, the woman in charge of that will also put out a newsletter following those meetings that lists what the opportunities are available, and that gets out to the outreach. So I'd say the established network that we have, plus relying on social media with things such as Sign Up Genius, are ways that we get volunteers. And then when we don't have enough, we will make phone calls to have people show up. I'll also point out the woman from the York County Interagency Coalition, so that's Sheila Caldwell of the Heart to Heart Foundation. She also has relationships with businesses that have days where the people are permitted days off work to volunteer, and so she can contact them if there's ever a need. They have a lot of employees, and they will ultimately show up and support volunteering also. And that's because she hosts an annual event where many companies, vendors, and agencies come out to meet with the community so she has those relationships. So relationships, social media, and networking are how we get volunteers.
Thank you. So our next question is about engaging school districts. They said engaging school districts can be a challenge. How did y'all successfully do it?
Yes, indeed. And so York County has 4 school districts, and you saw from the partner slide that one way that we did it was to get people on the leadership team from the school districts. Here we go. So we have one of our technical advisors is the lead nurse from the Rock Hill School District. She was on the leadership team when I joined, and she moved into the technical advisor role. And I know that I believe that she was attracted to Eat Smart Move More York County given the 5210 committee. So she probably was a key reason that 5210 was able to be rolled out in the Rock Hill School District. So it may have been, she was there before I got there, but she may have, but that initiative that attracted that school district may have been a key reason that we were able to attract her and her school district to our leadership team. Another one I will point out is that we have the Director of Food Services from the York School District, Letitia Holt, on our leadership team. She also is in charge of the summer feeding program in York County. So the USDA food program, she manages that, and there's one other woman who is also managing that. So we have 2 summer feeding providers in York County. Letitia Holt at the York School District is one of them. So after we had been communicating with them through COVID to see how we could support summer feeding programs. And we had been learning about her over time. She also was the one, we invited her group to talk to us about their food share program in the school district. So she is an innovative, forward-thinking leader in her school district, and we recognized the value of her work. So we reached out to her and asked her to share her information with us. So she came to a meeting and presented to us. Again, I talked about how important it was to do outreach and to invite people as speakers to our meetings and how we developed collaboration from that. This is an example. We used that information to contact another school district, and they were interested in that program. And that other school district, so Fort Mill School District, did start testing out a food share program. Related to that, we also were able to support that. I think they were able to get a grant related to that through Eat Smart Move More South Carolina. They were able to get a grant. I'm not sure who it came through to support the food share program. So the way that I'll say that we do it is we try to understand what's going on in the school districts. We try to learn what they're doing, and then we try to support their efforts and direct resources to them as best we can. I came in as a parent of a kid or kids in the Fort Mill School District, so I have personal interest and reach in there, so I get to see what's going on in there. We have other members of the coalition who are parents in the school districts. So we have both nurses, food service people, and parents that are part of our leadership team and partnership. So just prioritizing, learning what we can about the school districts, supporting them. So it is hard. They're each doing their own thing, but we know they want to do the best that they can, and we want to support them as best we can.
Thank you so much. We have one more question here. What challenges or what was the biggest challenge you faced at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, and how did you overcome that?
The biggest challenge would be being at home and feeling helpless and not knowing what was going on in society and therefore how we could help. So the way that we overcame it, so I wanted to learn what was going on. For example, in my neighborhood, the playgrounds were shut down, and my family loves to go outside. We love to play. So I thought, what are we going to do if the playgrounds are shut down? And then I realized that's not just important to my family, that's important to the whole community. And so then I decided that I would start to compile the information. So we pulled together, leadership team gave me information that they knew. We pulled together the information that we could from the various communities, and we published the article on what's open now and what you can be doing to go outside and play in a safe manner with your family. So take a walk in your neighborhood. As I said, we hosted the mindfulness session online for anybody to view. So recognizing the challenges that we were going through, and then trying to get the correct information and pass it out to the people and support them in their efforts to try to stay physically healthy, mentally healthy, and sane during the challenging times. So that's physical health, mental health, and then again, compiling the food information. So hearing about how many people are being laid off, and then learning that food insecurity already was an issue. So this is on top of that. And then what can we do about that? So what we could do was compile information, share it out with the public. So I'd say biggest challenge, all of the uncertainty, and the way we got through it was trying to lessen the uncertainty and minimize it, and try to bring some good, try to bring hope and opportunity to people in the community that were kind of feeling helpless or hungry too. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for this great presentation. I'm so glad that you were able to join us for our Leadership Summit this year. And thank you to the audience for your questions.